Mum, and today we're going to look at compound, and I am helped by my husband.
Hello.
And so, yeah, I basically don't know much about compound, so you're going to have to explain what
Yep,
it is
okay.
and what we're going to do.
Good. Okay, so here we are. This is the interface for compound. So it's compound.finance. And as you can see here, kind of scrolling across the screen. So compound is a way of taking some cryptocurrency, some tokens on the Ethereum blockchain, and you lock them in to compound, and you can then earn interest off those tokens. Very much like a normal bank account. When you used to be able to get interest, you could put in £100 or €100 or whatever, and at 1% interest, and at the end of the year, you'd have $101 or pounds, whatever, that sort of thing. So this is exactly the same, but on the blockchain. So you're putting in tokens, and the reason compound works exactly how a bank would work is you're locking your tokens into compound and gaining an interest, and people are borrowing your tokens, and they're being charged a higher interest. So you're getting a percentage of the interest rate that people are paying to borrow your tokens, and compound obviously takes a margin off that. So okay, so let's click on app and get started. Okay.
So this, would it show any of your?
So at the moment we can see it says no account. So we need to we're logged into our MetaMask, but our MetaMask isn't kind of logged into compound. So we need to click on no account, and then we need to connect a wallet. So we're using MetaMask. Obviously other wallets are available. I think MetaMask is probably the easiest one. So let's click on that, and let's just
choose an account.
Well, it's selected. You can't just see it. Just scroll down so people can see. So that's the account we're going to use, and just
that one.
Yeah, and it's got a tick in it already because that's the one we logged into. So then let's click on next, and then obviously this is like a security sort of thing. So you can see again the URL there. It says app.compound.finance. So that's all fine. We can click on that and connect. Okay.
Okay, so you see that's the.
So now we can see the little.
That's the wallet.
That's the wallet number there.
Okay.
So what else can we see? So it doesn't show this terribly well, but the screen is quite nice that it's split, and you can see it says supply markets and borrow markets. So that's the basic kind of mechanic, like I was saying. There's the supply markets, people supply tokens, and then people borrow tokens. And obviously you can see that there's only a certain number of sort of tokens that you can supply and borrow, and you can see where it says APY. That's the average, the annual interest rate, the annual percentage rate. So we can
AP
up there, yeah. So we can see here on the supply side, those numbers are obviously smaller than on the borrow side, because that's people are borrowing for more than you're getting as interest.
Yeah.
But so what we can see here is there's a whole bunch of tokens. These are all tokens, obviously, on the Ethereum blockchain. Compound runs on the Ethereum blockchain, and depending on how kind of popular they are in terms of what people want to borrow, you get very different rates. So we can see here,
like 1 there, and then it's up to 8.
Yeah.
So why would people want to borrow, say, Uniswap? Then, because it's high interest there, and it must be.
Yes, I mean, it's with all these things, it gets a bit complicated. Basically, what it means is somewhere that there's a way of doing something else with Uniswap tokens that can get them a higher percentage. So normally it means they're staking into something else that's a bit more complicated. So compound is fairly it's been around for in blockchain terms quite a long time. It's not had any hacks or exploits, so it's pretty trustworthy. I mean, all this stuff is risky, so don't be putting more money. Don't be putting a lot of money into this stuff if you can't afford to lose it. But this is fairly kind of fairly trusted and quite conservative, where there's lots of other things that you could be kind of risky DeFi dApps that you could get a massive return on, but equally you might lose everything. So people might be borrowing these sort of at these kind of higher rates to gain more. What we call people use the term yield. So yield just means a return.
So what would be the conditions for borrowing if you go to a bank, there'll be lots of checks,
Yeah.
obviously, to see that.
Well, so that's a very good question, actually. So we can see here that, no, you can't. Well, so the one thing that's different on the supply side and the borrow side is we have this collateral. So in order to borrow in Compound, you need to have put in collateral.
Right.
So you can't just borrow. You can't just, as you say, you can't just turn up to the bank and go, "I want to borrow, $10,000," and they go, "Who are you?" sort of thing. So even on the blockchain world, they're not going to let you just borrow if you have not got anything in the system, because you're just going to run off with it. How are they going to get you to pay back?
Yeah.
So so the other thing we can see here is it says wallet here. So it obviously can look at our wallet and it can see what we've got. So we've got a lot of zeros here. We've not got a lot in our wallet, but we've got some ETH.
Yeah.
You can see the rate on ETH is rubbish. Like, no one cares. No one can do anything clever with ETH. So you could get, if you put your ETH in, you get 0.06%. So that's like about as good as you would get with a dollar or a euro. But actually DAI, so we have a little bit of DAI, get 10%. So in the big scale of things, that would seem as like not too bad. As we'll see, obviously we've got a tiny amount of DAI. We've got like less than $15 of DAI. So all this stuff is just for experiments. We're going to be losing money by doing this, even if we do it, because I don't know what the gas fees are going to be like on this. But so to do this, let's try and put some DAI in. So click on that little collateral next to DAI. Yeah, click on that. Yeah. Okay, so we need to enable this as collateral. So a lot of things on the blockchain, you go through a lot of different kind of signing things. So even before you get our DAI tokens and put them into Compound, we need to enable it first. Technically, I don't know why, but often you find with these sort of DeFi dApps, there's certain stages you have to go through, and you can't just like kind of whack it in.
It's a security thing. Maybe.
It's not security, no. It's a I think it's how the technology works.
Right.
So we can see here. We're not going to really go into any of this stuff. So click on use DAI as a collateral. So that's what we want to do, because this is a transaction on the Ethereum blockchain. It's going to cost a gas fee, so it's going to cost us $3.60 worth of ETH to do just that. So no one would do this at the level we're doing it at, but because we're doing it as an experiment, let's confirm. So now, as ever, we have to wait for Ethereum blockchain to take our transaction and put it into a block. So we have no control. Well, the only control you have over that is if you wanted to do something very quickly, you could put a higher gas fee, because that is what kind of you're paying for priority.
Okay. So where would you manage to do that?
We'll show you next. So it's gone through now. So you do that when you go through the MetaMask. When we do it next time, I'll show you.
Okay.
So we've done that now. Nothing looks like it's changed.
No.
So I assume it's gone through. But click on that again.
Let's
Yeah. Oh, it hasn't gone through again. Let's have a look. So in something like this, in this case, I mean, it may be we could just refresh here and see. Yes. So okay.
Oh, yeah.
So often you have to remember. So this is kind of a website in a way, but it's better to think of it as an interface to the blockchain. So stuff has happened on the blockchain, and the web page doesn't necessarily refresh to reflect it. Okay. So you have to be a little bit. Sometimes you think what's happened. It's always best to first thing you do is refresh the web page and see.
Good.
Okay,
that happened.
So we can see here now our collateral for DAI is approved.
Yeah.
But we haven't actually put any collateral in yet. So let's click on DAI. So we are going to supply DAI. So click on enable. I think it's what we just did last time. This is where it gets confusing, where you go through these various stages. So we're going to have to now click on this again. So this is again another. So this is allowing. You only do this one once. So if we were going to in future put more DAI in as a collateral, we wouldn't need to do this again. But you have to do this for every different token that you're approving. So the first one I think was just approving Compound as a dApp.
It showed a different fee.
Yeah. And now we're actually approving DAI as a specific token.
Right.
So let's click on that. Again, we can have to wait.
Okay, so here we go.
So so now we there's a big 0 where we've said we want to supply.
Yeah.
So we could just click on max.
Yeah.
So that's how much DAI we've got in our wallet.
Mm.
So obviously you wouldn't. This wouldn't be a economically viable way of doing it because we've already spent like $5.
Yeah.
To put in $15 of DAI, and we're gonna get, unless we're gonna leave it in for 100 years, we're only getting 10% a year.
Yeah.
And remember, when we take it out again, we're gonna have to go through a similar gas process.
Yeah.
So if you're doing this properly, you would never put in this small amount. But the whole point of this is we're learning.
Experimenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fine. So that's fine. We can supply that.
Okay. So I just go on supply.
Yeah. So here, if you're talking about the gas fee, so the gas fee now is $8.
Right.
If you wanted to, so if you click on edit, so here you can see it says this is the estimate gas fee. So the slowest, if you're not really bothered that it goes through, I don't know why you'd ever do this. You would click on 7.1.
Yeah.
It's chosen the average. If you really wanted to go through, like,
Yeah.
you would click on 10. But we can just click on the average. It's fine. Because we just noticed the transactions were going through fairly quickly. We weren't hanging around for ages, so that's fine. I just wonder how much ETH we've actually got. But yeah, click on confirm. Okay. I think this will be the last one anyway. Okay, so
We'll wait for a little bit.
But the point is, we're doing this with very small amounts, and that's very sensible for people who are learning.
Yeah.
But some people who have a lot of token value and are technically know what they're doing and maybe sophisticated investors will be putting millions of dollars worth of value into these things. So the thing with DeFi is interesting that you can do very small amounts. I mean, it's not cost effective to do that because of the gas fee sort of thing. But equally, people can put enormous amounts in and they'll be paying the same sort of fees.
Yeah.
And because it's DeFi, there's no you have a MetaMask wallet. That's all you need. No one needs to know who you are or where you're based or anything like that. Good thing.
These interest. I mean, when you go to a bank and you're promised an interest rate over a year, and you have it all, so it's a deal. Whereas here, can this just change tomorrow, all the interest rates? And
yeah, absolutely. So this is dynamic. This is dynamically driven. So that's a very good point. There are some dApps are now starting to be able to give you fixed interest.
Right.
So that is starting to come in because people, want that kind of confirmation security. Yeah, no, it's a good point. And over the last year, they have gone up and down a lot. At the moment, they're high. They are high. But there's generally always the case that some tokens always have better interest rates than others. I mean, DAI always has a higher interest rate. Always has a fairly high interest rate.
Is that because it is a what's it called, a stable coin? Or?
Yeah, it's partly because it's partly how you create DAI. It's quite hard to create DAI, so there's always a lack of DAI, and it's quite useful. Anyway, so we've clicked off that now, so we can just click on the X to get rid of that interface up there. So now we can see the UI has changed quite a bit. So if you look at the top of the screen now, you can see supply balance actually has a value there.
Yeah.
And if you just you may have missed it then, it will suddenly start going up. So every time an Ethereum block closes, this will go up a little bit. So actually, I think this was 000 at the start.
Yeah.
So it's actually gone up a little bit. So obviously this is a tiny amount. This is just like insignificant amount because this is 10% over a year. This is so, and we can also see here down below this actually kind of shows it kind of highlights here. It's taken DAI up into the UX, the UI. So it's not just down there. So we can kind of see what our balance is. There we go. You see, it just went up. Yeah.
Good.
So that kind of shows it kind of working. It's going up again then. So now we could go on the borrow side.
Now here, so I was just thinking here, it says borrow limit, and then it says where does that amount come from?
So we've put in around $15 worth of value into this account.
Yeah.
it makes sense that we can't borrow the same amount as we put in, because that would just be ridiculous. If you put in your bank $100 and you take out $100, then the bank doesn't really. I mean, the bank doesn't lose anything, I suppose. But for most cryptocurrencies, the price of things changes. Now, for a stablecoin, it shouldn't.
No.
But all of these kind of supply and borrow products have what they call a collateral percentage. So if you put in $100, you can there's a smaller percentage you can take out. So different products have different levels, and it depends a little bit on quite how risky what they're doing is.
Yeah.
So generally, people have 100. Will it be 150%? So if you put in $150 worth of value, you could take out $100 worth of value. And obviously, once you put something like that in, the percentage will change as the price of the token goes up or down. And so the big problem you have with these sort of things, if people are putting in a lot of value and the price of tokens changes a lot, is you could have what's called liquidation. So basically, if you go below a certain percentage of collateral, then that loan is closed down automatically. And then because the bank doesn't want to lose any money, so the bank will basically go, your loan was fine when you took it out, but the price of your collateral has gone down by 30%, and that means your liquidation, the percentage of what you can take out has changed a lot as well.
Yeah.
And we're worried that you're going to end up with less collateral than you've borrowed.
Yeah.
Because the collateral price has dropped so much. So in order to stop doing that, they would liquidate. They would basically they would force you to pay your loan off, and take your collateral. And if there's any left over, you would get that back, sort of thing. Yeah. It gets very complicated because there's different systems how it works. And in the case of DAI, it doesn't really matter because the price of DAI shouldn't change. But generally, this is why you have this this collateral level.
Yeah.
So it says here, liquidation only applies if you have borrowed assets. So I don't know if this will work. So if we said we want to go and get some compound, we want to borrow. So we'd be borrowing compound, which is the token that compound kind of is called its governance token. So we could hardly borrow anything because we've only got, I was saying 80% limit. So we could take, so the limit is if we put in $100, we could borrow 80.
Yeah.
So we could borrow, if we put in, no, I haven't done this yet. No, we can't borrow because that's borrowing in the coins. That's a silly one to choose. Yeah, so no, so this gets quite complicated because we're borrowing the compound token, and you need to know how much a compound token is in order for it to work. So yeah, it would probably sound a bit stupid. And I'm typing weird stuff in there. Okay, if we wanted to borrow that amount of compound, then that would take us to our limit would be 65%. We'd be borrowing $7.17.
Yeah.
And that would be we would be using up of the absolute amount we could borrow. We'd be using up 65% of that.
Yeah.
And that, yeah. But the whole borrow thing is much more complicated because it's thinking about why people would go off and use these things to and that's what at the level we're operating at. It's just quite it's interesting that you can maybe if you had any of this compound stuff you can get 37%. I mean that's good. So the other thing is as I mentioned it there is this compound token called Comp, and actually, it has come up a few times in here. I've not really gone into it in detail, but by using the compound DApp, we also earn a little bit of comp.
Okay.
So at the level we're operating at, it won't even count as anything because it's so small.
Yeah.
But basically, they created this token. One of the reasons was that to be able to give back value to people. So. If you have some of this comp token, which we will get like tiny percentages of 0.0000 whatever.
Yeah.
It allows you to vote. So you go up here. See our comp balance is 0 at the moment because nothing's gone through yet.
Yeah.
But this is kind of one of the interesting things about DeFi in the long term is people can create these kind of features of what they think comp should be doing. So this one here is they wanted to adjust the reserve factors. So basically some tinkering around in how the thing works. Or this one here, they wanted to do some grants. So get some comp tokens and give them out to grants for people to maybe improve comp, this sort of thing. And you can see some of these passed, some of these failed. So this one here was interesting. Distribute comp to affected users in the DAI liquidation. So it looks like a whole bunch of people got their accounts liquidated. People borrowed DAI, and something happened to DAI, and they all got liquidated. And someone said, well, we should distribute some of this comp token that we have to these affected people. And you can see it failed, didn't get enough votes. But if you have some of this comp stuff, you can start voting in these things. Obviously, if you have a very small amount, it's not, you're not there's people with millions and millions of dollars worth of this, and they can kind of run it themselves. But you can start to get a feel about how, just because you have a bank account doesn't mean you can go and even vote on what the bank's going to do. You can start to see a little bit how in a few years' time this kind of stuff might be, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because if you have millions of people with very little, they can have the impact of a few people with millions as well. So that's comp.
Good. Well, thank you for watching. See you next time.